Some of the first problems Falun Gong had were with the media. In 1996, a national newspaper, the Enlightenment Daily, published a criticism of Falun Gong's main text, Zhuan Falun.
That's their way of doing it. During all of the political persecutions by the party, they would always start with the media and destroy their target step by step.
After that happened, a lot of people started to write letters to this daily newspaper. And some of the people also write to hire the government official.
Faced with pressure, the paper buckled. It was a pattern that would be repeated many times. An article would be published, and practitioners would protest. Some would write letters, while others would show up in person. In almost every case, they would get an apology, a retraction, or both.
Why have some government departments in the country continued to disparage Falun Gong from 1996 until now? There has been criticism from 1996 until now. It is inconceivable. Cultivators are from all levels of society, from the party, politics, and the military. Some have been educated by the party for several decades and have a deep feeling for the party.
Later that year, the government banned all Falun Gong books from further publication. And the following year, in 1997, the Public Security Bureau began investigating Falun Gong practice sites.
A plainclothes police officer would go to the practice site every morning. He would do a name call every morning so he would know who was there and who wasn't. Everyone knew who he was because we all lived in the same neighborhood and we knew what he did.
The main goal of the investigation was to collect evidence that Falun Gong was a religion. China only recognizes 5 religions, so calling Falun Gong a religion would be a legal reason to ban it. But the investigation failed. A religion for China had to have a building, ceremonies, and a tangible organizational structure. Qigong practices typically had none of those. Falun Gong had a loose network of volunteers who taught the exercises in parks, but that's it.
We called them assistants. They were volunteer coordinators at the practice sites. There was no so-called leadership.
In 1998, the Public Security Bureau was again investigating Falun Gong, and practitioners around the country reported harassment and raids on their practice sites and homes. But the tipping point didn't come for another year. On April 11, 1999, a youth journal of the Tianjin College of Education published an article titled, "Why Young People Should Not Practice Qigong." But this time, when practitioners came to appeal, the Public Security Bureau told the paper not to back down.
After we spoke to an official from the paper and explained the situation, the official acknowledged that they had made a mistake, that they hadn't understood the situation clearly and they could rectify it. But after one day of sleep, on the next day, he came out and said they actually hadn't done anything wrong.
After 11 days of stalemate, the Public Security Bureau dispatched riot police and broke up the protest by force. Many people were beaten, and about 45 were arrested. As a response, practitioners appealed to the city and provincial governments, but they were told it was out of their hands, and they had to take their appeals to Beijing.
News of the incident quickly spread around because Beijing was close to Tianjin, and Falun Gong practitioners nearby found out about this very quickly.
In the morning, I went to the practice site. A fellow practitioner told me what happened in Tianjin.
In 7 years, Falun Gong had attracted 70 to 100 million practitioners. But the fortunes of Falun Gong were about to change dramatically. It was a turning point, a critical moment in the history of modern China. For Falun Gong, it was their last chance to stop the investigations and harassment, and to lift the ban of the books.
By the evening, some practitioners came out and said that everything had been explained. They said everyone should go home.
The protest attracted a lot of attention, but it didn't put a dent in Falun Gong's popularity in China.
It was very impressive to outsiders, and I think to other Chinese, because it showed that it was possible to organize something completely outside of the state sector. That it's now possible to have organizations that are completely autonomous. They don't depend on state subsidies, they don't depend on state tolerance, they just operate on their own, the way a normal private organization operates in most countries. That's something new for China.
And later on, after April 25th, in fact, the Chinese press also publicly saying that there's no policy against Falun Gong, and people have the right for freedom of meditation and practice.
But in reality, time was running out, and the persecution was getting closer and closer.
But all these things changed on July 20th, 1999.
Inside the movement that changed the course of history.
Falun Gong is threatening to the Chinese leadership and the Chinese bureaucracy precisely because it stresses principles that just by naming the principles, you're insulting the Chinese bureaucracy. Particularly truth, and that's the one that has the most power.
Throughout my life, I felt that everywhere I found myself was just not quite right for me. I had been seeking something, but now I had finally found it. I felt I had come home.
I used to feel that life was very tiresome. I guess I'm speaking spiritually, like the heart is tired. The feeling I got after reading the book was that this is how a person can live.